We need fresh blood, younger minds, people who understand where the world is going. That's what my son told me, sitting across from me in the very office I helped build, in the business I started. My name is Douglas Kincaid. I'm 55 years old. Founder and, until recently, managing partner of Kincaid & Rowe, a boutique architecture firm in Asheville, North Carolina. We specialized in sustainable commercial spaces long before green design was something companies bragged about on LinkedIn. I built this firm from scratch. First drafting table in a garage. First client? A friend of a friend who needed a restaurant remodeled. 15 years later, we had a 12-person staff, 40-plus corporate clients, and a regional award for community design impact. Then my son, Evan, came on board. At first, I was proud. He was smart, charismatic, a graduate from RISD with a minor in environmental engineering and a portfolio slicker than a TED Talk. Clients liked him. So did the younger staff. I thought, maybe this is what legacy feels like. It wasn't. Evan had ideas. Big ones. Corporate rebranding, AI-assisted design, influencer marketing. He called it modernization. I called it a distraction. But I didn't push back, not until he pushed me out. It's not personal, Dad. We just need someone who gets how the new generation thinks. That's what he said the day he asked me to step down, not retire, not consult, just step aside. He actually used the word dinosaur. Said it like a joke, but not really. I didn't argue. I just looked around the conference room, the one I designed myself, and nodded. If you're sure that's what's best for the firm, I said. He seemed relieved, like I'd saved him from some difficult confrontation. He even tried to hug me on the way out. I didn't hug back. What he didn't realize was that I wasn't crushed. I was already thinking ahead. Because while Evan was busy rebranding our website and building TikToks, I was remembering clients. Not names on a spreadsheet. People. The ones who'd call me on weekends because their zoning applications hit a wall. The ones who needed a new office layout in 48 hours because their investor walkthrough got moved up. The ones who, for 15 years, didn't say, "Call Kincaid & Rowe." They said, "Call Doug." I drove home in silence that night. No radio. Just the hum of my Ford Ranger and 100 thoughts lining up in my head. I didn't want revenge. I wanted something else. I wanted to build something again. The next morning, I made coffee the old-fashioned way, stovetop, French press, none of that Keurig nonsense Evan loved. It felt grounding, like flipping open a sketchbook after months behind a screen. Then I opened the drawer where I kept an old-school Rolodex. Not digital. Not synced. Just worn index cards, one for every client, contact, or contractor I built something meaningful with. I hadn't touched it in years. But they were all still there. Miles Chen, owner of that yoga studio chain we built out in 3 states. Valerie Torres, who once called me from a hospital waiting room to say she trusted me to handle her entire expansion project. Dan and Michelle Coates, married couple, business partners, friends, we designed 4 properties together. They didn't hire Kincaid & Rowe. They hired me. I flipped through each card slowly, making a list. Not the kind of list you write with urgency, the kind you build with precision. By 10:30 a.m., I had 11 names circled. I called just one. Doug. It was Valerie. She picked up on the second ring. No assistant, no screening. I was hoping I'd hear from you. I saw the website. Your name's gone. I paused. Yeah. Evan's taking things in a new direction. There was silence on her end. The kind that isn't empty, it's judgment without words. Is he okay? She asked, carefully. He's fine. Young. Ambitious. Wants to run it his way. And you? I'm figuring that out. Another pause. Then, well, if you figure it out and need a first client, I've been thinking about redesigning our Austin location. The new guy they sent from your firm didn't even know we used reclaimed wood in our builds. She chuckled. I didn't. I'll be in touch, I said. But I already knew. That wasn't a door opening. It was a client returning. Later that day, I called Rosa Quinn, a graphic designer I'd worked with on 6 builds. She freelanced out of Charleston now. I need branding, I told her. For what? A new practice. Smaller. Focused. And I want the name to say exactly what we're about. Let me guess, she said. Kincaid 2.0? No, I said. Call it something people haven't forgotten. Just my name. Douglas Kincaid Studio. Simple. Honest. No fluff. By Friday, I had a logo, a landing page, and a new LLC registered with the state. I didn't blast it online. No announcement. No LinkedIn monologue. Instead, I emailed 3 people, Valerie, Miles, and Michelle Coates. Short, personal notes. No pitch. Just, I've stepped away from the firm. Starting something new. If you'd ever like to reconnect, I'd love to catch up. By that evening, all 3 had written back. All 3 wanted to meet. This wasn't about stealing clients. It was about reminding people who I really was, and what I'd never stopped doing. We met at a coffee shop just off Biltmore Avenue. One of those cozy, locally owned spots with too many plants and no digital menu. Just a chalkboard and a barista named Quinn who probably knew every customer's story. Valerie was already there when I walked in. Same poised posture, same oversized leather planner, but now with silver streaks in her hair that hadn't been there 3 years ago. Doug Kincaid, she said, standing up with a smile. Still wearing flannel in July? Tradition's hard to kill, I smiled back. We sat, and for the first 15 minutes, we didn't talk business. We talked about her daughter's graduation, about Asheville's changing skyline, about the bike accident I'd had last fall. Apparently, word travels. Then she pulled a folder from her bag and laid it on the table. This is our Austin location. We're ready to remodel, but I've been putting it off. You know why? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Because I didn't want someone who saw it as a job. I wanted someone who gave a damn. The way you always did. She opened the folder. Site photos. Layout sketches. Permitting issues. Same dance as always, but it felt different. You're not asking for a bid, I said. Nope, she said. I'm asking for your calendar. I smiled. A real one. Client number 1. Officially back. That evening, I got a call from Michelle Coates. You still drawing by hand? Sometimes, I said. Good. I'm flying in Monday. Dan and I want to talk expansion, and the new guy Evan sent us was 20 minutes late and showed up with slides but no questions. 2 days. 2 clients. That's when I realized I didn't just have momentum. I had gravity. Monday morning, I was reviewing project specs at my kitchen table when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Dad, it's Evan. His voice was tight. Formal. The way people sound when they're trying not to sound nervous. Hey, son. Everything all right? Have you been reaching out to clients? There it was. No. I've been reconnecting with old friends. If they happen to also be clients, that's their choice. Silence. We had an agreement. You said you were stepping away. I did. Then why is Valerie Torres telling me she's going with you? And the Coates are asking for termination terms. I didn't respond right away. I wanted him to feel the silence. "Evan," I said carefully, "you told me you wanted to take the business in a new direction. I respected that. But I didn't stop being who I am. These people didn't leave the firm. They came back to me." He exhaled sharply. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "No," I said quietly. "I'm just doing what you forgot to do. Show up for people." He hung up without another word. By Thursday, I had signed NDAs, confirmed zoning consultations in Austin and Charleston, and was back in the field with a tape measure and a mechanical pencil. Clients weren't looking for slick presentations. They wanted someone who still walked the property, touched the materials, and asked how their kids were doing. Meanwhile, Evan? He was trying to make legacy fit inside a Google ad campaign. He thought he'd inherited a company. What he'd actually inherited was a building, and a name he never learned to carry. By Friday afternoon, I was ankle-deep in construction dust at a demo site in South Asheville, reviewing load-bearing wall options with a contractor I'd worked with since 2011. We spoke the same language: rough sketches, head nods, and knowing when to shut up and let the space talk first. I was adjusting a structural note when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Miles Chen. "Hey, just wanted to let you know, your son sent over a new proposal for the Durham location. Looked impressive, but felt off. You free this weekend?" I stared at it for a moment, thumb hovering. 3 clients. 3 clients who weren't chasing a firm, they were coming back to a person. And all of them said the same thing in their own way. The work might have stayed, but the soul didn't. That night, I got a call from Rosa Quinn, the designer who'd built my brand from scratch just 2 weeks earlier. "You didn't tell me Evan's firm launched a full-blown digital ad campaign with your name still in the metadata," she said. "What?" "Check their site. Your name's in the SEO tags. Founded by award-winning architect Douglas Kincaid. He's using your legacy for clicks while you're over here rebuilding from zero." I didn't get angry. I just wrote down one word on a fresh legal pad. Separate. Not from the clients. From the noise. The following Monday, I got an unexpected call from David Langston, a developer from Charlotte who once hired me to design an entire live-work block in South End back in 2016. "Heard you're flying solo again," he said. "Word travels fast. Especially when half the people at Kincaid and Rowe are whispering about how you were pushed out," he said bluntly. "I'm building a new innovation hub. I don't want a firm. I want a person. You interested?" I leaned back in my chair. "Send me the brief." "No brief. Just lunch. I'll drive up Thursday." I didn't smile until after I hung up. The next day, Evan cracked. I was heading into a site meeting with Michelle Coates when my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID said, "Office, Kincaid and Rowe." I answered. "Doug, it's Allison." She'd been our office manager for 9 years. Knew the firm better than anyone, including Evan. "I'm calling as a courtesy. Evan just called an emergency staff meeting. 5 people have given notice in the past week, including 2 junior architects who said flat out they don't trust the direction he's taking." "I'm not sure what's happening over there anymore," she continued. "But it doesn't feel like your company." "That's because it isn't," I said. "Not anymore." By the end of that week, I'd signed my 4th contract under Douglas Kincaid Studio, and gotten word that one of our oldest legacy clients had quietly requested all future correspondence be sent directly to me. No press release. No lawsuit. No drama. Just gravity. I wasn't chasing anything. I was just standing still and letting everything come home. The call came on a Sunday. Not a workday. Not a board meeting. Not a scheduled calendar alert. Just a quiet ring on a quiet afternoon. I was sanding a reclaimed oak beam in my workshop, music low, sun pouring through the garage window. It was one of those days where the world felt balanced, Sawdust, old tools, no noise. Evan. I stared at the name on the screen longer than I probably should have. Then picked up. Hey. His voice was smaller this time. No pitch. No rehearsed confidence. Just a man in freefall trying not to sound like it. I need to see you, he said. You seeing me right now? I replied, more softly than I expected. In person, he added. Tomorrow? Please. We met at Pearl and Pine, a quiet place near the edge of downtown. Neutral territory. Not one of the hip new coffee bars he liked to hold meetings in. Just wood-paneled walls, soft lights, and the sound of cutlery on porcelain. He looked tired. Shirt rumpled. Sleeves rolled. There was a twitch in his left eye that hadn't been there before. I messed up, he said before I even sat down. I let that hang in the air. Didn't offer comfort. Didn't try to fill the space. Clients are leaving. Staff's walking. The Coates just terminated 3 contracts. And Valerie? She told us, word for word, Doug remembers the things that matter. He rubbed his temples. You built something I didn't understand. I thought if I made it bigger, flashier, more efficient, I could improve it. But all I did was strip out the part that made it real. He looked up at me then. I don't expect you to come back. But could you at least help me fix it? I sipped my coffee. Watched him. Thought about the 25-year-old version of me, building sketches on my knees in a garage while Evan played with blocks 2 feet away. I'd given this kid everything, knowledge, trust, a foundation. But I hadn't given him one thing, room to fail. And now that he had, the question wasn't whether I wanted revenge. It was whether I saw anything still worth saving. Evan, I said slowly, what you've lost, it's not something I can rebuild for you. He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. I didn't make those relationships in a month. They were earned. Over holidays, at midnight calls, across state lines. They weren't just projects. They were people. He nodded, eyes glassy. But I will offer you this, I said. Not a rescue. Not a job. A partnership. He blinked. Not on paper. Not in name. A real one. You rebuild trust, not with me, with them. And if you do, we talk. If not, I set down my cup. Then the clients will have made their choice. He didn't argue. Didn't protest. He just said, thank you. That's more than I deserve. That night, I got a call from Valerie Torres. Did Evan talk to you? He did. Good. He needed that. Then, quietly. But don't let him pull you back in unless he earns it. That's the plan. Good, she said again. Because you've got something real now. Something his version of the firm never had. Identity. She was right. I wasn't the firm anymore. I was the standard. 3 weeks passed. Evan didn't call again. But I heard about him. Indirectly. From clients. From Allison. Even from the city planning office. He'd started showing up early. Asking questions. Calling old clients just to check in. Not pitch, just listen. One of my former engineers told me Evan stayed on a Zoom call for 2 hours walking through soil test reports with a small business client. Something he never would have bothered with a month ago. He was learning. Not how to run a firm. How to be part of one. Meanwhile, Douglas Kincaid's studio was no longer a sketch on a napkin. I had 5 full-time employees, a waiting list 3 months long, and a client roster that read like a greatest hits album from the old days. Not because we were cheaper, or flashier, or younger talent. Because we showed up. One afternoon, I got an email from Miles Chen. Just wrapped our Raleigh build. Honestly, it was better than the last one. Not because the specs were sharper, but because the people cared more. Attached was a photo, his new yoga space, open air, exposed brick, filtered sunlight, recycled timber. And in the corner of the photo, on a custom bench he'd commissioned, a brass plaque, designed with intention, by someone who remembered. The next morning, Evan showed up at my studio unannounced. Not to pitch, not to plead, just to return something. "I found this in the old file cabinets," he said, holding out a thick, worn notebook. "Your original client notes. Dates, sketches, even personal stuff, birthdays, vacation memories, client kids' names." He paused. "I used to think this was just clutter. Now I realize it's the whole damn business." I took the notebook, ran my fingers along the edge. It smelled like paper and dust and 10,000 conversations. "Sir, you going to be okay?" I asked. He nodded. "I've got to rebuild some things. But I'll do it the right way this time." I believed him, because failure had taught him something I never could. That Friday, Valerie, Michelle, and James Chen joined me for dinner at my house. Backyard table, candles, nothing catered. Between bites of grilled salmon and stories from half-finished projects, Valerie raised her glass. "To second acts," she said. "And the architects brave enough to start from scratch." I smiled, lifting mine. "Not from scratch," I said. "From memory." 2 months later, I stepped onto the stage at a small design conference in Durham. Not to talk about buildings, to talk about something else. "We're told to chase innovation, efficiency, disruption," I said, looking out at the crowd of fresh-eyed architects and seasoned veterans alike. But the most disruptive thing I ever did was remember people's names. They laughed. Then they listened. "Legacy isn't about your name on a wall," I continued. "It's about the people who still call you when the wall starts to crack." As the applause rolled in, I caught sight of Evan, in the back row, arms crossed, smiling. He didn't need to run my company. He needed to build his own. And I was right where I belonged, on solid ground.